Hello, and welcome to a training video from the Baha'i National Organization Office of Education and Schools entitled, What Data Do I Need for My Registration System? There has long been a question about what data you need to gather in a registration system. Some think that you cannot get too much data, and others think that a more moderated approach is better. In this video, we will discuss some of the principles of data collection in your registration system. The principles discussed here will be equally relevant to any registration system, whether on Cvent or some other platform. We'll start with some important terms. The registration type is a data point that we use in Cvent to set pricing for events. Every guest must have a registration type. A primary guest is the person who is filling out the registration. It's important to note that with few exceptions, the primary guest must be aged 18 or older. Additional guest includes all other people who are registered by the primary guest. An admission item is a path in the registration process. An admission item may include multiple other items in a bundle for a single price. For example, a full session will often include the school fees, basic housing, and a meal plan. Sessions are individual items and are used when a guest isn't staying for a full session or wants to add upgrades to their registration. Optional items are options that don't fit into sessions, and we sometimes use these to select special housing options or special items like t-shirts or photos. Identifying your needs. What do I need to know about every individual who attends? What do I need to know about specific groups of people? What do I need to know about a registration group? For example, family or friends who register together. And what special information might I need to know about a person, and what triggers the need? And finally, what will I do with the information gathered? Remember that you want to use everything you ask for, so think carefully about your needs. The data for all guests. It's important to know that some data is required from all guests. The reason is that you cannot run your event without knowing certain things. For example, a full name, a home address, phone number, email address, and that registration type. Some data is also needed for reporting purposes. Some examples include gender, religious affiliation, dietary restrictions, special needs, and age range. And pricing data is needed of all guests. In Cvent, this is calculated by the admission item, sessions, and/or optional items that are ordered. Some data is only needed for some guests. For example, if a primary guest is adding additional guests, then it might be good to know the relationship between them, a spouse, child, a friend, what have you. Some data collected will also spark other needs. For example, if a guest is under 18, then you might want to know that person's age, birth date, or school grade, and/or if there are any special needs for that child. And some data will only be needed for additional guests. For example, in most cases, a question about whether a guest is under 18 would only apply to additional guests, as the primary guest must be 18 or older. And what about some data for the group? There's some data that will apply to a registration group, whether that is a single person, a family, or a group of friends. For example, the photo release applies to the entire group. Other examples of data that would be the same across a group might be an admission item or housing upgrade. For example, it would be rare to have a family where some members used one type of housing and others a different type. It's not impossible, but it's rare. So how do we ask for data? There are different ways to ask. Each method has times when it is the best way. A direct field is a way of asking where you place a description next to a text field. For example, you can ask a guest's name by creating a text field and placing the title, name, beside it. Questions are another way to get information. A question can be open, defined, or hybrid. The difference is whether you give one or more possible answers or give the registrant a text box to answer in. For example, is this guest younger than 18 along with two choices, yes or no, gives the registrant an opportunity to answer the question. Similarly, do you have any special needs with a text box allows the registrant to answer fully. And finally, a hybrid question is one that has both possibilities. For example, yes, no, other. Finally, it should be remembered that all data gathering can be required or optional. A required field must be answered before the registrant can leave the page, while an optional question may or may not be answered. So let's cover some basic data collection rules. It's important to know that there are a few things to keep in mind when you're collecting data in your registration system. The first is that Cvent and most other platforms can collect almost any data you need. If there isn't already a field built, you can often build a custom field. Remember, though, that there is a cost in gathering data, not in terms of dollars and cents. We don't charge you by the question or the byte, but in the way your guests feel about you and your event. Asking too many questions or appearing to not be listening to their answers can cause your guests to second guess their desire to attend. Finally, remember that there are ethical questions in gathering and storing data, and these questions are coming to the forefront in many people's minds. What happens if there's a data breach? Are we asking for sensitive data that can be used by identity thieves? So, what's next? The thoughts provided here are intended to start conversations. There aren't many questions that have absolute answers, so try to be flexible. Remember that the collection of data is something that is also flexible. Things you decide to do this year may or may not be done next year. Also, things you don't do this year may be required in the future. If you are using Cvent to host your registration pages, then you can ask the National Registration Coordinator for a list of the data points you are currently collecting, and we will be happy to assist. Finally, consult with your fellow committee members if there are any concerns. Please, again, feel free to contact the Office of Education and Schools with your thoughts about your school session, this presentation, or subjects for future videos. We are always happy to assist. Our contact information is listed below. Thank you.